Thank you for listening to the BJJ podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
All right, welcome back, my friends, to the BJJBrick podcast. This is episode 263. It's the BJJBrick extra episode, and I'm stoked to have interviewed Tim Credeur for this episode. He's a BJJ Black Belt, UFC veteran, and a local legend in Louisiana. It was great having him on the line. I'm here with my good buddies Byron and Gary. Guys, how you doing today?
We're doing great. We're excited for this extra episode. It's the best part of the month when you get more than one episode of BJJBrick in a week. So here we are together again.
Every time I hear BJJBrick Extra, it makes me think of gum. I don't know why. I guess there's a gum called Extra, but it's loaded with flavor, just like our show.
And super fresh.
Hopefully.
I thought you were in a doublemint, Gary. Isn't that double your pleasure?
Well, that's my other podcast, Joe.
Okay.
We won't talk about that one on this show.
But yeah, excited for this episode. Joe, what can we expect during the interview?
Well, we talked a little bit about some of his UFC history. Talked a little bit about pursuing excellence and some off the mat habits and practices he has. He's big into reading and meditating and doing that kind of thing. We talked about that a little bit. Talked about gym culture. We ran the gambit, but it was a great interview. The guy's very insightful and pursues excellence in his life every day. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
Wasn't he also on one of the Ultimate Fighter seasons? If I remember.
He was.
Yeah, if I remember
one
right.
One of the early ones, I believe.
Yep. I remember seeing him there. I remember seeing him in the UFC. Like you said, the guy's a legend. BJJ Black Belt, MMA fighter. Just an incredible martial artist.
And like most guys who have really achieved some things in their lives, they don't feel the need to talk about it. In the interview, we didn't talk about all of his past achievements necessarily. We focused mainly on how we could help other jiu-jitsu athletes. So, guys, in our BJJBrick extra episode, we do things a little bit differently. We don't have a quote, but we do have a tip of the month. And this one was brought to us by Byron. It was his suggestion. And it's the one more round after class concept. And the idea here is that you can basically add an extra day's worth of training to your month, 5 minutes at a time. It's hard sometimes to come up with an extra day to go to class. But if you get an extra round or even 2 extra rounds at the end of class, and then you add those 5-minute increments up, at the end of the month, you'll have hours of extra rolling. Byron, you do this?
Yeah, I do a lot of times. I think Gary is really the king of rolling an extra round during training. But this could be a big concept if you're somebody who is a little bit pushed for time. Typically, my jiu-jitsu class ends around 8 o'clock, and my wife gets off work at 9 o'clock. I have a 30-minute drive. I can get home and get showered and get something going for dinner. I'm kind of in a hurry anymore these days when it comes to the end of class. But like afternoon class, if I do a class in the middle afternoon, I do like to stay late and roll extra. That's always a good plan for me. But what this does, if you're pushed a little bit for time, like for the week, not for like in the evening like I am, it takes me 30 minutes to drive to class. And then we stretch, we warm up.
What do you drive, backwards?
It takes me the same amount of time to drive back home. It's a long drive, on the other side of town. But so I have an hour invested in driving. That doesn't go away. So once I'm there in class, if I trained for 5 minutes, which doesn't happen, but I will have spent an hour and 5 minutes to do 5 minutes of jiu-jitsu. But we train, let's just say, make it easy, an hour. So half the time I've invested in jiu-jitsu today was for me driving to jiu-jitsu, and then half of it was actually training. Well, while you're there, and you have to, and if you count the time of me, like, coming home and doing my jiu-jitsu laundry and showering, that sort of stuff, maybe I wouldn't have even showered if I didn't jiu-jitsu. Sometimes it's good to just stay sweaty. But so the time commitment is already there. Adding 5 minutes doesn't affect any of the other variables. The drive is the same. The cleanup at home is the same. The prep work before class is the same. 5 minutes literally cost me 5 minutes. If I'm going to go train a whole other day, it costs me the whole chunk again. So if I want to get 4 days worth of training done and only have 3 days, I might be able to sneak in an extra 10 minutes at the end of each class, and I've added 30 minutes of mat time with people, and that does add up. And I think it's like the way I look at it, it adds up, but it also doesn't add. It saves me time in the long run because I'm able to eliminate. If I do eliminate one of the days, I still have a lot of training and less drive time, less other things that affect your time on the mats. So that's kind of my look at it. It's a little different than John Wills that we had him on here. He mentioned doing extra reps during the same amount of time and that sort of thing. But you've already committed the time. You're already there. You're already warmed up. You're stretched. You're sweaty. One more round, you're adding on your training without having to add anything else.
There's other ways to accomplish this. And Gary, this just occurred to me to ask you. You typically will roll 30, 40, 50 minutes straight without a break, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, no, I wondered, did you think about this when you started training that way? Because I typically don't. So if I roll 40 minutes, it's usually a 5 or 6 minute rounds with a minute in between. And I may come up to a round where I don't have a training partner. I sit one out. So in 40 minutes, I may only actually train 30, and you get the whole 40. Did you think about that when you started that?
No, I didn't. But, it goes both ways. If you do take that minute break, roll 5 minute rounds with a minute break, a lot of times you go harder in that 5 minute stretch because a break's coming up. I just roll a little bit differently. I'm a leisurely roller. Even when I'm rolling an hour or 2 hours straight, I'm never, not going crazy. But I notice a lot of times when I do roll rounds and take a minute break, I do roll harder, tax my cardio a little bit more. And I do get a little bit tired just because I push it a little bit more. But no, I never really thought about that. But my thing, Joe, is, you guys are talking about this, roll one more round, 5 more minutes. I don't have a lot of time to roll. I roll maybe 3 days a week. And like Byron said, I won't take a round off. I'll always be the first one to roll. I'll be the last one there until everybody quits. I'll be that guy who, if you want to keep rolling, I'll stay rolling with you forever. I'm that guy. I don't have a lot of time. So I want to maximize the couple days I get in. And it's funny that you brought up this concept because last night I was at the YMCA. On days I don't do jiu-jitsu, and even on days I do jiu-jitsu, I like to go to the YMCA and lift weights, do some cardio, play some basketball. It's fun to me. So last night I got there a little bit late. So I got there at 7 and it closed at 8. So I didn't have a lot of time. And normally I like to start off with 30 minutes of cardio. And I knew I was going to really kind of run out of time because I was a little late. Normally it takes me about an hour and 10 to an hour and 15 minutes. So I had just finished up, I'd done my cardio and I hit some weights, and they just announced on the time as I was walking out of the building. I was walking towards the entrance, and they announced it 7:57 over the intercom. And I just remember thinking 7:57. And right when they said that, as I was, making my beeline towards the exit door, I was right in front of an elliptical machine. And I remember telling myself, I was like, hey, I might as well just get on this for another 3 minutes. And I had no clue that we were going to talk about this, or, I can't say I do it all the time, but I was like, man, I just did 3 minutes. So somebody may look at it that, hey, that's stupid, 3 minutes. But the way I looked at it is like, it's 3 more minutes of me burning calories, 3 more minutes of me taxing my heart, 3 more minutes of me moving my joints through a full range of motion. I just thought it would be beneficial. And, and then here you guys are talking about, one more round. So I guess I did practice that yesterday.
It's like I was hearing the teammates say, you don't get a butt like Gary's without working out an extra 3 minutes every other now and then.
You can bounce quarters off it, Byron.
I'll keep my quarters in my pocket. Thank you very much.
No, but I really think this is a great tip. I like you guys were saying, John Will is talking about it. Joe, you made a good point that you can basically have another class per month just by doing that. And I mean, we don't have infinite time. It'd be great if we did. We've got stuff going on, and Joe, you got a crazy schedule. Byron, you just mentioned your schedule. Me, I'm in prison during the day, and they let me work, and then I got to go back, so I don't have a lot of time. So we got to maximize our time. Actually, I'm really not in prison. That was a bad attempt at a joke.
Not anymore.
Yeah, he's
I get off on work release.
The man has served his time. But yeah, it's an easy concept, and it's so most people we're done with class, we go home. But a lot of times and part of it depends on the coach and what's happening at the gym. But if coach doesn't mind if you roll, find one of your most enjoyable training partners, find somebody who doesn't mind going extra round, and see if they want to do a little bit more. And you should see gains from that pretty quickly.
I'm glad you brought that up, Byron, because about the instructor, if they mind or not, because I actually got in trouble for that one time.
Come on, Gary, we're closing this thing down. I'm tired. I got to go home.
Yeah. Well, it was actually before. I was like, hey, I'll meet you before class, and we'll roll off into the side, on the side of, in the match while another class is going on. And it didn't go over very well. But I also didn't communicate it beforehand. Maybe if I communicated it, might have been better.
Yeah.
But if it's okay with your coach, that's another great way to do it. That's what I was going to say. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes at the end of class. It can be at the beginning. If you get there early, I know the schools that I go to, there's not always a class right beforehand, and neither of the coaches have any problem if you want to get out and start doing some rolling or some drilling or something. So if you find yourself you made better time getting to the gym than you expected, and you're there 10 minutes early, and one of your training partners is there, ask them to get a light roll in before class or do some drilling or something. However you get it, you just get that little extra time, and it adds up.
Yep, that was our tip of the month. Find one more round or a little bit more time to squeeze in while you're there. It'll be all worth it. What kind of a tip would you guys have for somebody who's in their first year of jiu-jitsu?
If they could find an audio book that would kind of talk them through some of the questions they might have and some of the challenges they might face, that would be my tip, is to buy that audio book.
Where would you go about to get that said audio book, Joe or Byron?
Well, you might find one here. Byron, have you got one by any chance?
Yeah, it's in my pocket, and I'll just go ahead and leave it there on the show notes or on the website, BjjBrick.com.
I definitely know you got a lot of room in your pocket. So
I throw all my quarters out, bounce to match you, Gary. But what's happened is I've created an audiobook. It's about 2.5 hours long, called Your First Year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I really want to walk you through that first year and make sure that it's a good one. Make sure that you're performing the best that you can at the end of the year, and that you're having a good time and likely to stay on the mats for a long time. That's really the goals with the audiobook. I know I made a lot of mistakes my first year on the mats, and Gary, he made one more than me. And that's why he had to serve some time. No,
yeah. The one more mistake I made is I became friends with Byron.
There you go. And I appreciate that, Gary. But we'll walk you through some of the common mistakes and kind of get you on a game plan as far as the techniques you should be working on that will really pay off in the long run. You think about it, if you do the right techniques as a white belt, you could be doing those same techniques as a black belt. And I know I have some of those techniques and things I've learned early on that still echo in my game, and it still are basically the same way I've been doing them. I've been getting better at them, been fine-tuning some details, but the fundamentals were laid down early. And some things I did early on were kind of a waste of time. And I led myself astray in many categories. And I think that if I could have avoided that, I'd be slightly better than I am today, and maybe up to Gary's level. by now. But,
you'll never get to that level.
Dang.
Level 4.
I'm shooting for the stars, though, and if I shoot the stars, I might land near the moon, just not Gary's moon. Maybe Joe's moon. Joe's got a nice moon as well.
I don't show my moon very often.
This has been an odd episode of complimenting you guys' butts.
Well, hey, we do work out.
All right, well, yeah. I don't know why I keep putting my foot in my mouth and doing that, but I can't get my foot in my mouth in reality because not that flexible.
Man, Byron, you have turned this into a crazy episode talking about mine and Joe's hindquarters. So, it's crazy, but I think I'll get us back on track and get ready for the interview. We'll have that up next with Crazy Tim Credeur.
He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
His De La Riva guard was so strong that his opponent's mom fell over. He has never gotten mat burn, but sometimes you can find burn marks on the mat. Neil Armstrong watched him roll and said it was the most amazing experience of his life.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
I'd like to welcome Tim Credeur to the BJJ Brick podcast. Tim's a black belt out of Lafayette, Louisiana. I believe the first black belt out of Louisiana. He's a UFC veteran and a local legend. Tim, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, bro. How's it going? Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I love having the opportunity in my life now to, try to speak some of the things that I know into people's lives and hopefully help people through some of the struggles and trials and tribulations I've been through. So it's an honor. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Oh, man, it's our pleasure. I'm glad to have you on the air. Why don't we start with, if you want to take some time, as much time as you want, give us a brief introduction, how you got into martial arts in general, and how you ended up where you're at now.
Well, my life really has always been defined by grappling and martial arts and boxing and combat sports in general. My father was a boxer. I grew up in a home where we didn't watch or basketball or baseball. We watched boxing. And my dad boxed, and combat sports was, essentially what we participated in. That's what we did. I didn't never went to a basketball game or a football game or anything like that with my dad. Not because he wasn't a good dad, but those weren't the things he was interested in. And so, from a young age, I remember people coming over to my house to watch Mike Tyson, Roberto Duran, Leon Spinks, Sugar Ray Leonard, and, those guys were my icons, my heroes, because my dad liked them. And so, I'm like any other little boy, I liked them too. My son now, he watches Ramon Decker and, Dustin Poirier comes to his house, and his idols, he doesn't even know what a football game looks like. He is 100% a mixed martial arts and kickboxing fan. And, I grew up the same way. And so I was at the boxing gym at 5 years old with my father. And over the years, he put me in boxing and in martial arts, various places. And I really didn't 100% fall in love with martial arts until I was about 9. I remember starting martial arts under a current business partner of mine, but he used to be my martial arts instructor. And it's a guy named Joanne Kona, who is legendary in New Orleans, although somewhat infamous to many. He's a nutcase, but one of my business partners. We put on fights together, and I was his martial arts student had a 7-year-old kid, and we practiced hot keto, and he was a kickboxer, kind of like one of those guys that wore the silk pants with the dirty, like child molester mustaches, kind of the bouffant hair that was on ESPN in the 80s. He was one of those guys. And he used to teach me martial arts, and I thought it was cool. You know, I went to martial arts. I was kind of like, whatever. You know, I mean, I thought it was okay. But there was a big difference happened at one time in my life. I guess I was about 9 years old or so. And my dad said, Sensei Joe is fighting in a fight. Would you like to go? I said, I mean, I guess, you know, whatever, I guess so. Is it going to be like a boxing match? He was like, no, it's like kickboxing. Trying to explain it to me, I didn't really know what he meant. So I went there, and one of the assistant instructors, Sensei Robert Visitation, he used to wear a pink gi top and black pants and a black belt. And I thought he was like the Miami Vice karate dude. He was just unbelievable. He knocked his guy out in the first round. Joe Ancona was the main event. He beat the brakes off some guy and head kick knocked him out in the second round. And I almost exploded with excitement. I remember standing on my chair thinking I might be able to fly. I was so excited. And I told my dad that day, I want to be a fighter. This is amazing. And so I kind of had an upbringing in it, and I kind of got hooked up with the right people, you know. And over the years, I kept training in high school, and I boxed a little, and I got heavy into football. Football's big in the South, so I was really good at football. But at about 14 years old, my father called me. Him and my mom were divorced at the time, and he said, Timmy, my mom and my wife and my dad, they call me Timmy. My father's name is Timmy Sr., so they called him Big Timmy, and they called me Little Timmy my whole life. When I went off to the military, I told people my name was Tim, and I've been Tim ever since. But to my loved ones, they call me Timmy.
Well, you know,
if you're hearing this and you come up to me and you call me Timmy, I'm going to punch you in your mouth, because that's reserved for my loved ones and my family.
Well, you know, Tim, you and I haven't met, but I know some of the people that have trained with you and trained under you, and I've come to know you as Crazy Tim.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm pretty normal nowadays.
That goes back to the UFC days.
Fighters would say, actually it doesn't. I'll tell the story of where that comes from.
Okay, great. My
fighters would say very differently. They would say, oh, no, he's still fucking nuts. I don't know if you can cuss on your podcast or not, but if you can't, I'm going to fuck this shit all up today. So.
We're semi-PG-13, but
okay.
Yeah, as long as it's not over the top, we're okay, Tim.
Well, I'll probably break those rules, but I'll do my best. Jesus loves me. I just remember, being fascinated. Throughout the years in high school, my dad invited me to his house, and he had rented the first UFC. I think I was 4. Living room I was sitting in. I remember the 2 girls that were over with me. One of my girlfriends in high school and her friend, Gabby and Jennifer, were there. And it was me and my dad. And, it was kind of like where you were when 9/11 happened. It was such an impactful moment that you remember where it happened, what exactly was going on. And I remember that day vividly. And, man, it changed my life. I was just literally transfixed by jiu-jitsu. I couldn't believe that this dude could do this. I kind of thought it was a gimmick or a sham. I couldn't really figure it out. But a couple of years later, I traveled out to Florida and did a jiu-jitsu seminar. I told the instructor after I didn't think this stuff was going to really work on me, and he destroyed me in a nice way and showed me the error of my ways, and I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. And I was doing impromptu UFC fights in my backyard with my unsuspecting high school friends, and I was triangle choking them and arm barring them and key locking them. And I thought I had found a magical power. I mean, I was like, dude, I don't even know anything, and I'm killing my friends. So I had a bunch of football scholarships, but I found a way to join the military. to get to a jiu-jitsu school. This was 94. The only two jiu-jitsu schools I could find in America were Renzo Gracie in New York. I had no idea how to get there. But Southern California had the Gracie Academy and some other upcroppings of jiu-jitsu there. So I found out that in the Navy, I could get to San Diego some kind of way. I figured I could do it. I was a pretty smart kid. I joined the Navy, got stationed in San Diego, and I started training immediately. As soon as I got off the plane, I think 2 days later, I found a jiu-jitsu school, and I began training. About a year later, I met Rodrigo, and we've been together 20 years. And, you know, it's kind of where my life started. I never started in jiu-jitsu or fighting in MMA to be a UFC fighter. I just thought it was incredible, and an opportunity came for me to fight somebody in Mexico in a bullfighting ring with no gloves. I was wearing Speedos. I think the other guy had jeans on and Vans tennis shoes. He may or may not have been slightly drunk, and beat the crap out of him. And I took him down and armbarred him. And I was more fascinated that day. I got $50 and 3 all-you-can-drink tickets to Club A and People's and some other club in Tijuana. And I was transfixed with MMA. And I've been fighting ever since, man. But,
nice.
You know, my modality in MMA, for sure, I'm a fighter. I just like to fight. I'm not an athlete. I'm not trying to eke out a victory. I'm not trying to catch a check. I like to fight people. I like fighting. I like fighting. I don't know what to say. I love Jesus, but I like fighting too. And that was always the way I fought, you know, and that's the way my gym is, and that's the way my fighters are. We have a card. I have about 13 guys on the card we're doing Friday. Not one of my guys has even called me to ask who they're fighting. They could care less. Long as it's not me, they are stoked. So that's kind of how our academy runs. And, you know, over the years, of course, I got my belts. I eventually got my black belt in 2005 from Rodrigo at a school in Houston that was opened by me, Yves Edwards, and Jeff Messina, called Revolution Dojo. There's still 2 locations, one in Katy and one downtown. They are doing amazing, hundreds of students. Rodrigo gave me my black belt in an abandoned building in a warehouse district in Houston in 2005. So I've been a black belt, you know, going on 14 years. And, you know, it's been a wonderful opportunity. Rodrigo was there in my life when my parents went through a divorce. I was an angry kid. I grew up in a very difficult part of town. My parents were going through a lot with each other, with my younger sisters and all types of things. And, you know, on some level, I was kind of a loner, and I needed some leadership. I needed some mentorship. I needed a role model. And when I found Rodrigo, you know, he kind of stepped in, you know, and I hate to say this, it sounds cliche, but you know, he was a lot like the Mr. Miyagi dude, you know. He was like Mr. Miyagi who surfed and was cool and introduced me to amazing stuff and, you know, radically changed my life through jiu-jitsu, and it kept me out of trouble. He taught me the virtues of martial arts and living a virtuous life, more by his example than by the things he said, but had a dramatic impact on my life, changed my life forever. You know, I owe him everything. I have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful kids and businesses today, and, you know, I really owe everything to Rodrigo. You know, I would be a mess had it not been for him. And so, you know, yeah, martial arts, I was the first black belt in Louisiana. I don't even know. I mean, I guess I was kind of, you know, I kind of found jiu-jitsu early, and I was lucky maybe, was in the right place at the right time. But yes, I fought in the UFC. I was on the Ultimate Fighter, all those things, you know, I guess those are things that somebody on the outside would look at as huge accomplishments and accolades that, you know, to me, it's great. You know, it's a great thing. But the least of things that Rodrigo and my training in jiu-jitsu has given me is a black belt, or the ability to armbar someone or fighting in the UFC. Those are really the least of things. You know, today I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I'm a better teacher. I'm a better man because of Rodrigo's influence on my life. And, you know, there is nothing that I can ever do to pay him back for that. Because as an older man, as a 40-year-old man, I look back and I see that now, you know, but how do you say thank you? You know, how do you say thank you for, man, thank you so much for giving me so much that me and my son and my daughter have just beautiful relationships. I have a beautiful relationship with my wife. And it's a lot because of what Rodrigo taught me and the way I learned to be a man through jiu-jitsu. So all those things are great things, and I'm sure your listeners are excited about them. But, you know, the long run in jiu-jitsu, the long game in jiu-jitsu is so much more valuable than any of those accolades or any of that being on TV bullshit. And I'm super grateful for that, and I'm trying to pass that down to the guys that I have under me, because that's the only way I know how to say thank you, is to, you know, try to be the mentor he was to me, to others, and try to lead and guide guys the way he did me, so that I can at some point say, thank you, I've done your work and I've passed it on to others.
Man, that's awesome, Tim. That's more than an introduction. That's a testament to all things that are great about jiu-jitsu and the martial arts. I appreciate it. Hey, you mind if I throw a couple questions at you that your answers may provide some help and some advice to newer students?
Love to.
Okay. So I imagine you've probably seen 10,000 new students or more in your years of running a gym there and being in martial arts this long. What are some attributes that you see in students that have some staying power? You know, you see the white belts come in, and some of them last for 6 months, and some of them, you've probably been training with some for 12, 15 years. What are some attributes of the students that are going to make it?
Consistency. Above all else is consistency. You know, so many times, especially in our modern culture, you know, what people are really looking for is instant gratification. We want to be satisfied today. We want to be pleased today. We want the results now. And, you know, in jiu-jitsu, that's not available. It's just not realistic. Jiu-jitsu is designed to take advantage of natural human instincts. So when you walk into a jiu-jitsu academy and you enroll in classes and you start training, those natural human instincts, they still exist in you. And can't really change that. That's a natural thing. Like, all brand new white belts roll the same. I mean, it's not I've never seen a guy come in on his first day and be like, wow, this guy is completely different. The only time that ever happens is that I wrestled for 5 years, or I've been doing Hapkido for 8 years, or whatever. For the most part, white belts are white belts. And jiu-jitsu takes advantage of your natural instincts. And it's not going to be until you curtail some of those natural instincts, until you start to develop beyond your natural instincts. You can come in here, Cody. Learn what those natural instincts are and start to behave differently. That's the thing about jiu-jitsu, is we learn technical strategies that take advantage of natural instincts. But for jiu-jitsu to work, you have to suffer for a while, right? For jiu-jitsu to really take hold in you, in your mind, and to captivate you, you have to be on the losing end of the jiu-jitsu grapple for 6 months, a year, maybe a year and a half. You have to understand, not only logically, but like in your spirit, why and how jiu-jitsu works, what it feels like to be just dominated by somebody. And it's going to happen a lot when you first start. That step is a necessary step. Without that step, no one would devote 10, 15, 20, 50 years to a jiu-jitsu practice. Because without that perspective, you can't value jiu-jitsu the way it needs to be valued. With that perspective, you will dedicate more time and effort on the mat. You will increase at a dramatic rate. But for that to happen, the suffering must be there. There is nothing I've ever done in my life. You know, these accolades you talked about, my black belt in jiu-jitsu, fighting in the UFC, even being a father, being a husband, fighting in the UFC, all of those things while I was doing them absolutely sucked. Like being a dad sucks sometimes. I mean, it sucks. It's hard. It's very difficult. You know, if I took a single guy and put him in my position who didn't have kids, and what I got to do in a day for my kids, wake them up, feed them, give them a bath, it's crazy. It's hard. It sucks. Is it worth it? Yeah, the juice is worth the squeeze. But the suffering is there. And it's necessary. And it's very necessary in jiu-jitsu. If a student can endure beyond their ego and not be persuaded to go do cross-fail or to go do paintball or BMX or whatever other thing they feel they'll be better at, and they stick with jiu-jitsu, it's a life-changing practice. And it is a practice. It's like yoga. You never reach a day where you're like, I know everything. I mean, listen, I've been doing jiu-jitsu over 20 years. I got 4 jiu-jitsu videos in my bag, and I've watched a bunch of pad holding videos today. Like, I'm crazy. Like, I'm watching stuff every day, all day. It never ends. It's a lifelong practice that has built me into the man I am and given me thousands of friends. But if a student can stay committed just 2 days a week, 3 days a week, for that first year or year and a half, that's what it takes. If you're a white belt and you're listening to this, listen to me. Turn your brain off. That voice in your head that's telling you, you don't need to do this, this is hard, it's difficult, I should quit. Tell that voice to shut the fuck up and continue the work, because, man, the juice is worth the squeeze. It's so incredible. You know, jiu-jitsu is just, you know, jiu-jitsu and MMA, being a part of a community like our school and like most good schools that I see in the country, they're building these families of, you know, at our school, man, it's like a family of nomads. It's not a family of people who are cool, you know, because we weren't that cool. We were like the not really that cool people. You know, most of my guys, you know, they got into MMA after retiring from a devastating career in Magic the Gathering or Dungeons and Dragons or comic book collecting. You know, these aren't like guys who are going to go do the NFL combine. Are you kidding me? No, sir, not at all. These are like, you know, the misfits, the juvenile delinquents, the miscreants, the people who, you know, social norms forgot, the socially awkward. Jiu-jitsu's full of those people. It's full of it. If you look at the people who are at the top of jiu-jitsu, I mean, John Danaher is an absolute weirdo. Eddie Bravo, weirdo. Gordon Ryan, weirdo. Gary Tonin, weirdo. Jeff Glover, weirdo. They're all weirdos. Weirdos. Complete weirdos. And they found a home. I'm a weirdo. Around other, you know, people who are individual and maybe not championed by common culture. But in jiu-jitsu, we found a place where we can express ourselves, where we can be who we are, where we are appreciated for who we are. And it takes consistency to find that family. But jiu-jitsu families around the world, it's an incredible thing to be a part of. I can go anywhere in the world and pull my gi out of my bag and have 50 friends. Everywhere I go, I travel, I go visit jiu-jitsu school. I don't know nobody over there. I pull my gi out of my bag. People taking me out to eat. We're going to the bar. They're taking me out the next day. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I have guys from my academy that travel, and I send them to my friend's school. They're like, dude, I didn't even get to see my family. I hung out with these dudes for 3 days. It was ridiculous. That's more value. Because, look, we're not building relationships like that for young men in America anywhere else. You know, the military does that a little bit. Firefighters, firemen, you know, they have that fraternity, that community a little bit. But in jiu-jitsu, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. You know, there's 150 phone numbers in my phone that I can call if I'm out of town and my wife's car breaks down with my 3 kids in it. I don't know what to do. There's 150 dudes in my phone that I can call. They're all jiu-jitsu guys who would take a bullet for me, for my kids, who would pick my wife up, bring her home. I can trust them. I mean, that is something that we don't find in our community.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's something about the on-the-mat struggles that we go through, like you say, persevering through the difficult times that builds a camaraderie that you don't find anywhere else. I've visited.
You just don't find it.
Yeah, I've visited a lot of other gyms, and, I mean, within 10 minutes of walking into a gym, it's just like it's my home gym, it feels like. And I've been to churches. I've been in other scenarios. I'm a sailor by trade. I go on vessels, and there should be a tightness there too, but it's nothing like you find on the jiu-jitsu mats.
No, it's crazy, man. And so, you know, I know that first year, that first 18 months, that first 24 months, I know it's tough. Stick with it. You'll thank me one day. Next question.
Yeah, let's talk about a more technique type of conversation. What should guys be focusing on if they're at a school, they're not fortunate enough to have a beginner class or just in the general population? What kind of techniques and movements do you suggest people really focus on their first 6 or 10 months on the mats?
I mean, I really teach a lot. Like, I teach kind of a blended style because I was taught a blended style. So what I mean by that is I was on the Navy judo team. One of my partners here is a judo black belt as well. And I also came up under the Carlson Gracie system. And so, you know, man, we did self-defense, we did stand-up, judo, wrestling, and we did competition-style jiu-jitsu. We did all of it in one. Now, in our BJJ 101 classes, which is what we call them, the intensity level is a little lighter. You know, when I was going in Carlson Gracie, Los Angeles, the intensity level was at its absolute maximum capacity at all times. It was crazy over there. 100 students joined, 3 stuck around for more than 6 months. It was nuts. At our school, you know, we focus on allowing people who want to stay at a more recreational level the ability to do that. And we blend in your first 6 months the fundamentals of break falling, hip escapes, takedowns. What is close guard? What is side control? What is guard passing? How do I defend myself if somebody grabs me? We don't really focus too much on what do I do if somebody pulls an Uzi on me, or if they have a machete, or we don't mess with all that. It's Louisiana. What we do is we shoot people. In Louisiana, we shoot you. We have guns here. This place is the Wild West. You don't be pulling no machete on nobody where we live. You're going to have a long day at the office. But we focus on fundamental self-defense and fundamental jiu-jitsu. Our guys at the beginning stages, they do roll, but a lot of their rolling is from positional level, from a positional standpoint, or from some of the scenarios we've been working that day. And we give people the time to get comfortable with jiu-jitsu. I think it's important as a jiu-jitsu instructor to understand that I have 3 kids, okay? 2 of those kids, when I wanted to teach them how to swim, they wanted to get in the shallow part and feel the water and splash it on their face and then put their feet in. And then eventually they kind of got waist deep in the water. And, it was a gradual thing. And me and their mother gave them the time to learn how to swim at their own pace. My middle son, Henry, he's been written about in Revelation, I believe. He just went dive right into the end of the 18-foot swimming pool. No big deal. Sank to the bottom. Don't give a damn. Henry's a lot like his father. He's a nutcase. Henry would survive at the Carlson Gracie Los Angeles Academy. Audrey and Wesley would have never survived. Understanding that jiu-jitsu can be for everybody, but it does take some time for some people to get comfortable with jiu-jitsu, because the spatial relationship in jiu-jitsu is definitely awkward and different for regular people. A lady comes in and wants to do jiu-jitsu or wants to learn self-defense, and within that first couple minutes, she's got another dude sweating on her face. That's just not going to go that well. There needs to be some time where she can understand what the martial art is. She can see how the martial art works. She can understand that she can practice this martial art. And that is a necessary part of how we teach jiu-jitsu to the world. Because the way jiu-jitsu was taught back when I was young, it was only jiu-jitsu for the fanatics. We were fanatics. Carlson Gracie Los Angeles was in an abandoned house. I thought it was, Times Square. I thought it was the greatest building in the world. When my wife came visit me in California, she was like, man, you are in an abandoned house in a Mexican ghetto in Los Angeles. This is crazy. I thought I was, at Disneyland. So my perception was different because I was an extremist and I was a fringe fanatic. Today, jiu-jitsu is a little bit more mainstream. And we need classes that slowly take people from the kiddie section into the shallow water and then into the deep water. We do have kids who want to jump in the deep water right away. But over the years, I have noticed that those kids usually don't stick around. And it's important for us as instructors to pay attention to these statistics and to pay attention to how jiu-jitsu is actually growing best and give people the best path to be successful and utilize jiu-jitsu to its full capacity. So that's kind of the way we do it. Works wonderfully. We almost have 3 different classes of jiu-jitsu at our gym. We have a BJJ 101, we have a BJJ 201, and then we have a class called the BJJ Workshop, which is pretty much a lot of drilling, a lot of high-level techniques, and then full-on ADCC, IBJJF, grappling, no rules, go for it, to the death.
Nice. Hey, Tim, in your BJJ 101 course, is that do you require your students to go to that class only for a period of time before they go to the next level?
It's a loose agreement. When they start, we tell them they need to stay in this class for a while and they need to converse with the instructor until we're ready to move them to the next level. They never have to. And we have people who've been in the BJJ 101 class for 4 years and they're not interested in doing other levels of jiu-jitsu, which is fine. But we have people who are in it for 3 months and they're like, all right, I'm ready to go to the next level because they wrestled in high school or they're young, they want to be more competitive. And sometimes we kind of have to, pull the reins on them a little bit because it's all fun and games till you go to practice and get bow and arrow choked 47 times. And, it looks like you got drug down the street by your seatbelt across your throat when you get home. That happens. If you put a brand new dude in a workshop class, he's going to get throttled. Now, most of our students know not to do that, but, it does happen. And it happens because sometimes those white belts have the most amount of piss and vinegar, and they go in there trying to jump on some brown belt who's been training 10 years, and he's going to break you off a piece, dog. If that's what you're looking for, he's going to break you off. And so making sure that doesn't happen is important. Does it still happen? Well, yeah, absolutely. It's a jiu-jitsu school. Absolutely. I mean, if you're looking for it, you're going to get it. But for the most part, all of our higher level guys and all of our guys are there to help people grow. Sometimes people just want their ass kicked, and that is also available to you. We have that service as well.
Yeah. Yep. No additional charge.
Mm-hmm. You come up in my school talking about your 97th degree Shihan gold helmet, black ground ninja belt. We about to put that shit to the test. No problem.
Yep. Hey, let's talk about competition for a minute, Tim. I know you've got a lot of experience, both as a competitor yourself and as a coach. For the guy that maybe he's competed in a tournament or two, but didn't really put a lot of thought into it, or maybe it's his first tournament, and he comes up to you and he says, Coach, I want to do a tournament. It's 8 weeks from now. How would you advise him to maybe change his training up a little bit to prepare for that tournament that's 2 months away?
Well, I think, once I get a person to the place where they want to start competing, where they're interested in competing, and they're competing on a regular basis, what I mostly tell people is, listen, if you want to get good at jiu-jitsu, compete as much as possible. You're going to get beat a lot. You're going to win a lot. It's irrelevant. The reality is the more time you spend competitively on the mat, the better you will get, period. Everyone comes back from a tournament, regardless of the outcome, 10 times better than when they got there. And that's going to happen for you as well. What I tell people, though, is when you're training for tournaments or whatever, what matters most is mat time. That's what matters most is mat time. I believe heavily in rolling, in doing jiu-jitsu live. But I also believe, like, say I'm a purple belt, I don't believe it's the best thing to always train with people light years ahead of you. Like, I see some purple belts like that. Like, I just want to train with the best guys in the gym, and I want to train with these big brown belts and black belts, and that's all I want to train with. I don't want to waste my time with these white belts or these blue belts. That's a really stupid way to look at things. And the reason is because it's going to stifle your game. If all you want to do is roll with me and you're a brand new purple belt and you're going world championship level with me, only thing you're going to get good at is defense. You're going to get ground into the mat to death. Because if you're going hard with me, I'm going to go hard with you. And all you're going to really get good at is defense and trying not to get smashed. And if everybody you roll with are better than you and bigger than you and stronger than you, you never have the opportunity to build an aggressive and an attacking game. But if you take the time to go roll with some blue belts and some white belts, and you get to be in the driver's seat, you're going to get to put those reps in when you're on the attack and when you're in control of the match. And those reps matter too. It doesn't just matter how bad you get beat up. You also have to put reps in where you're dominant, where you're in the mount and you're armbarring people and you're cross-choking people. And for that to happen, sometimes the people you're doing it to have to not be as good as you because you're not optimal at that either. And so for it to work, it's got to be somebody who's not nearly as good at it as you are. So I feel like a key ingredient in getting better in jiu-jitsu is rolling with people who you're considerably better than, people who are at your same level, and then also spend some time with people who are considerably better than you. Those three things in equal portions will make you well-rounded. It'll make you good at winning the dogfight. It'll make you good at winning when you're in dominant position, and it'll make you good at being calm and defensive when you're in a bad position. I think a lot of people kind of mess that up. They don't necessarily do that the right way. You know, they only see value in rolling with everyone better than them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it stifles their offensive game. They only get good at the defensive side of jiu-jitsu. And you see those people, they can't submit people, and every match goes all the way to the points. And that's why. They're tough and they're good, but they're not good at finishing because they're not valuing rolling with people who they're better than. I think strength and conditioning is whatever. Like, you know, you want to do that, do whatever. Like, it's whatever, you know? I mean, I don't think strength and conditioning ever defined any fighter's career, boxer's career, NFL athlete's career. Is it a component that you can utilize to help make what you do a little better? Yes. Should it be the focus? Hell no. Should it take away from your mat time? Hell no. Should it encroach upon your mat time? Hell no. And not at all. I think the things that are important are nutrition, dieting, not dieting, but eating healthy, eating clean, drinking a lot of water, focusing on what you intake, making the right decisions when it comes to writing down your goals, when it comes to verbal preparation and talking yourself into the fight. I think it's important to have good coaches who believe in you and are going to help you build new skills and develop. But when it comes to all this extra stuff people do, like yoga and going to CrossFit, and I just think it's a bunch of bullshit. If you want to get good at jiu-jitsu, go do jiu-jitsu. That's what you should do. Do jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Yeah, but I did jiu-jitsu this morning. We'll go do it again tonight. Going to CrossFit ain't going to make you no better at jiu-jitsu. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, CrossFit's going to make you better at jumping over boxes and slamming yourself on the ground and doing, what are those things called? Clowny pull-ups, clown boxer pull-ups. Go, you get better at all that, but it ain't going to make you better at jiu-jitsu. I know a lot of guys that are really good at jiu-jitsu, really good at CrossFit, who will get murdered in jiu-jitsu. I mean, they can't do anything. Like, so those two things I just don't understand. You know, for fighting, competing, is there an element of strength training that matters when you're doing it at a professional level? Yeah, we're talking about a game of inches. But as a white belt and a blue belt, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about you don't even know how to defend a cross choke. How many pull-ups you can do ain't going to fix that. That knowledge is way more important for you to drill and train than, you know, more pull-ups, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sound advice. How about the day of the tournament? A lot of new people, they struggle with the adrenaline dump. They struggle with nerves, struggle with the game plan. What kind of advice do you have for your students when they're stepping on the mat for that first or second tournament?
I saw John Danaher do a talk about this, and I couldn't agree more. Here's how people mess this up, you know, when it comes to performance anxiety. So John Danaher talked about when he was a kid in New Zealand, he went to school at this kind of farmhouse area where they had two buildings that were about 5 stories. And between the two buildings was about a 5-foot space, 5-foot alleyway. And they had this Evel Knievel type daredevil guy come do some tricks. And, you know, he said when he was a kid, he was amazing. But now as a grown-up, he's like the guy wasn't doing anything. But the guy took a plank of wood, like a 12-inch plank of wood, and went up to the top of the school and laid it between the two buildings. And he got on the plank and he walked across the plank to the other building. And he said, we freaked out. We thought this guy's a nutcase, this craziest thing ever. We didn't even go on the roof. It was unbelievable. And then the man took the plank down and came back downstairs and laid it on the grass and had all the kids walk across the plank without touching the grass. And every single kid could do it. And all the kids sat down and he said, raise your hand if you think you can do that up on the buildings. And none of the kids raised their hand. And he said, if you can do it on the grass, it's the same piece of wood on the building. The only difference is your perspective. And, you know, That's 100% true for competition. What you're doing on the mat every day and what you're doing in practice every day is the exact same thing that you're going to do in a tournament. The only difference is your perspective. And by perspective, I mean, the lights, my mama's there, my meemaw, my grandma, my sister, everybody screaming stupid shit, the lights, the medals, my coach is there, my training partners, everybody screaming. None of those things actually change the fact that you're doing the exact same thing you do in practice every day. All of those outside interferences only affect you if you give them credibility. If you allow those things to distract you, they will. But if you really boil it down, you're doing the exact same thing you do every day in the gym. It is the exact same thing. Nothing is different. It's almost identical. You will be better at competition the more you can normalize competitive environments. If when you go to a competitive environment, you turn it into this big thing, and there's all these distractions, and there's sponsors, and I'm buying a new rash guard, and I'm getting a bowl of acai, and my mama's here, and I'm going to win a belt. Well, now you're not doing what you did every day at the gym. Now you've introduced all of these distractions that are going to get in the way of you doing exactly what you do on the mat every day. But if when you go to a tournament, you wear the same rash guard, you wear the same gi, you're around the same training partners, you don't waste your time talking to nobody and doing none of that stuff. You just keep your head down, you stay focused, and you go out there and you compete with a minimal amount of exposure to those bullshit distractions. You will begin to normalize competition, which will allow you to be much more successful. Because the more it is an abnormal environment, the less you will be successful.
So I like that. It sounds like you're leading to this. I always like to think if a guy's going to compete regularly, if you can have a competition day routine that you follow, you get to the venue approximately the same amount of time before your match starts as well as you can. You have the same preparation, you eat the same meal, you have the same routine the night before. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No, I mean, yes, but that's really kind of tricking yourself. In my mind, I can trick myself. Like, I'm going to eat the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing. Realistically, though, in your mind, in your head, go out there and do the exact same thing you do on the mat every day. Do your exact game that you bring to the mat every day. Minimize the distractions. Change your perspective. And don't allow the environment you're in to distract you from the goals that you have on the mat. The reason that people can't be who they are in competition like they are in training is because their mindset changes. All of a sudden they're nervous, so-and-so's watching, what am I going to do? Those things are the problem, but those things are controllable. They're in your mind. They're not actually real. You don't have to go buy a new rash guard. If you just focus on doing the same thing you do at the gym.
So if you focus too much on having a game day routine, it's actually counterproductive.
Yeah, just show up and compete like you always do. Show up and perform the way you always do. Be the same as you always are. Do not allow this to be something different, something special. Don't get me wrong. Competing in MMA is different than training at the gym. But the guys who do it best, Donald Cerrone, they get in there the same way you go to get pizza. It's an everyday thing. Not that you go and get pizza is an everyday thing, but it's an everyday occurrence. There isn't any raise in blood pressure. He's not overly nervous. He's not overly anxious. Now, this process that I'm talking about, it does take practice. But a lot of athletes, jiu-jitsu and MMA, have no idea what they're even supposed to do. They don't even know where they're trying to go. But if I can understand that my mindset, my attitude, what I'm wearing, my beliefs need to be identical to when I'm in the training room, you will absolutely increase your performance. Most people perform better in the room than they perform in person. Now, there are some people that are more comfortable under the lights, and they do perform better under the lights. But the reason that is because they flourish in environments where there's pressure and there's attention. On The Ultimate Fighter, we had a kid like that, Jeremy May. He just loved attention. He wasn't that great in the gym, but once people were paying it, because why? When we were training in the gym, nobody's paying attention to him. But when he has a fight and everybody's paying attention to him, he fed off of that and performed better. You have to find what helps you perform better. For me, it's normalcy. If everything is just the same way I'm training and my mindset's the same, I get in there and I'm sparring with this guy just like I'm training at the gym, those were my best performances. When I built a guy up into something he wasn't, and when I built the situation, I'm fighting here, it's so-and-so, oh my God, what if I win, that's when I had horrific performances.
Nice.
And it's the same for all competitors.
Yeah, that's great insight, Tim. Let me ask you one last question on competition. There's a ton of rule sets out there nowadays. A guy might compete in a points-based competition one month, and the next month it's a submission only, and the month after that it's a submission only with an overtime ruling. How do you deal with that with your students? Do you kind of encourage them to look at the rule set and play to it, or do you have guys that are good fighters and you just say go out and do your thing and the results will take care of themselves?
We give no shits. We don't care.
So you're just going to go out and try and win a fight?
IBJJF rules, cool. What's that?
So you just tell your guys,
you
just tell your guys it's just a fight. Go out there and win the fight.
Well, yes and no. You know, like, I want to pay attention to the rules and understand what the rules are and all that stuff. But like, I think it's more beneficial for your life and your road as a martial artist to participate in a lot of rule sets. Like, you know, go do some IBJJF tournaments. I have guys who go do judo tournaments. We do submission-only tournaments. We do ADCC rules tournaments. We do Eddie Bravo tournaments. Who cares? Who cares? Everybody's all wrapped up into which one's the best and what's the best. And the best is just shut up and compete and expose yourself to as much stuff as possible. And those opportunities to expose yourself are going to increase your skill set in a variety of different aspects. You know, it's no mistake that a lot of the guys that do really well in the Eddie Bravo game, they do really well in the EBI game. There's guys that do really well in Abu Dhabi who also do really well at EBI, who also do really well in ADCC, who jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, man. Like, I don't believe in that worrying about the rules and trying to win by the rules and with an advantage. And I don't believe in that. I really don't. I just don't. I think it's shenanigans. I think you're focusing on the periphery of the sport when you should be focusing on the sport itself. I do understand there's rules, and if the score is tied and there's 2 minutes left, like, go for a takedown. That's understandable. But stalling the fight to sweep 10 seconds before the match so you can win by an advantage is whack. That's whack. It's a whack way to look at martial arts. It's a whack way to participate in martial arts. It's a whack way to be a person. Like, if you're going in an MMA fight, the goal of the MMA fight is to win your fight and finish your opponent. Those are the goals. And I win my fight by trying to finish them as much as possible. I don't win my fight by trying not to fight or having a little success in the first 2 minutes of the round and then just stalling it out for the last 3 minutes and hope the judges still give me the round. That is not the way to fight. And the reason I don't think it's the way to fight is because in the long run of you as a martial artist, you will be damaged. You are ruining your mindset for the long run. The goal in jiu-jitsu is to finish your opponent. And the points in jiu-jitsu dictate that the person who's trying to finish the most or who has the most success in achieving that path will be the winner. Now, people have found ways to, the rules and not actually try to finish anybody, not actually try to do jiu-jitsu the way it was meant to be done, and they're going to still win, but we see that game changing every year. For a couple years, they were doing Berimbolo. For a couple years, they were doing this, and for a couple years, they're doing that. Well, now everybody's back to close guard. So, it's just cyclical. Focus on jiu-jitsu. If we look at the guys who have withstood the test of time in the sport, who have done MMA, jiu-jitsu, gi, no gi, and who have done well, they're good at jiu-jitsu. They're not good at playing the rules. And so that's what I believe in. Who cares what the rules are? Compete in as much stuff as you can. Expose yourself to as much stuff as you can. Learn about the community. Learn about the rules. Why are the rules this way? What are they trying to do? Get good at those rules. Practice those rules. Practice how to do jiu-jitsu in the confines of those rules. If you can't submit people and you're getting beat because of the rules, figure out how you can use your style of jiu-jitsu to beat people who are playing the points game. I believe in as much competition as possible. Competing's a good thing if it's what you want to do, and who cares what the rules are.
Nice. That's a good take on that. Hey, before we wrap things up here, Tim.
My guys compete in everything. We compete in Honored Invitational. I brought guys to EBI, ADCC, IBJJ, MMA, amateur, pro. We don't care if you can elbow. We don't care. We're here to fight. Whatever the rules are, who cares? We're going to figure it out as we go. That's what a martial artist is capable of doing. And Bruce Lee spoke a lot about that in the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. If you want to get better at certain aspects of martial arts, go find a rule set that's going to help you get better at that aspect. And do that rule set for a while and get better. If your takedowns suck, go enter some wrestling tournaments where you can't do guard. You want to get better at your judo takedowns? Go do some judo tournaments. You want to get better at finishing people? Go do some submission only. Those tournaments offer you the opportunity to practice a variety of aspects of your game. And you should take advantage of that in that spirit, not in the spirit of which one's my favorite and which one can I collect the most medals in. What are you doing? All those medals and belts and Naga bullshit and swords, that stuff's going to rot in your attic and not give a damn. The only thing that's of value is the experiences you gain. So engage in as many as you possibly can. Because when this is all said and done, what you've taken away in terms of experience is all that has value.
Absolutely. Man, that's gold, Tim. I appreciate that. Hey, let me give you an opportunity to talk about something else I know you're passionate about before we wrap things up, and that's off the mat habits and disciplines that help you become in my notes here I put help you become better at jiu-jitsu, but they help you become a better person as well. You want to take a few minutes and talk about that?
I do a lot of weird stuff, so if I start talking about all the weird stuff I do, some people are going to freak out, but I read a lot. It's crazy. 3 books a week. I read a lot. I watch a ton of videos. I watch everybody's stuff. I buy stuff from BJJ Fanatics. I buy stuff from, I'm absolutely fascinated with Mitmaster right now. I'm a black belt under Duke Rufus. I watch his Duke Rufus videos. I'm a student of the game. I'm a student of the game. Now, this isn't the only game I'm a student of. I'm a student of money game. I'm a student of the marketing game. I'm a student of the jiu-jitsu game. And to be a student of anything, it takes time and effort. I spend a lot of my free time dedicating myself to the game. I'm not trying to watch TV and go to the movies and entertain myself. Although those things do entertain me, but I'm a 100% student. I drive around in my minivan. I've recently purchased a minivan because I have 3 kids and I'm down with that dad life. So props to the Gold minivan. If you ever see it rolling deep, just hit me with a little button pump. No big deal. But I study a lot, more than people imagine, a lot. I meditate every morning. I work out with kettlebells every morning. I wake up every day at about 4 a.m. and I have a morning routine that includes meditation, that includes a healthy breakfast with water, a lot of water included. It includes a workout. It includes me reading a book. And it also includes about 25 minutes of self-talk. I go in the mirror, I brush my teeth, and I get myself ready for the day, and I talk to myself. I read my goals. I have them written on 3x5 cards. I read the things I want to do for my wife, the things I want to do for my children, where I want to be in my businesses. I talk to myself in the mirror for a good while because I'm not that smart. And, I need to remind myself what I'm doing today and what my responsibilities are in this life to my students, to my family, to my wife, to my community. And so I do a lot of weird stuff in the mornings, but it prepares me for my day and for my life. I maintain a planner. I'm analytical about it. But I'm a crazy dude, man. I'm a little bit, I'm in a room right now in my office that's kind of in the back of the Diamond Training Center. That's all whiteboards on the walls. And I write all kind of marketing plans and fight strategies and business plans. And I live in this room all the time. I got one computer, a table, and a bench. And I just sit in here and build my life. But that has happened over many years of me working and reading to become the best version of myself. As a 40-year-old man with 3 kids, that's no longer as a professional competitor. It is now as a business owner and as a coach and as a mentor and leader of young men, but it is no less important.
Any book recommendations? Anything you've read recently that would be good for the young guys to check out?
Yeah, there is a couple I've read recently. Let me look up this picture of this one because this one's a good one. I have Ray Dalio's book Principles is incredible. It's about a hedge fund manager who runs a pretty relentless company. But the book is called Principles, and it's on the principles he uses in his daily life and the principles he uses in his business life. And it's a pretty incredible book. I also really like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. It's a counterintuitive approach to living a good life. It's an incredible book as well. And then a book I read probably every 2 months is The 4 Agreements. The 4 Agreements. I can't remember who wrote that one, but it's in my car somewhere.
Okay, we'll look it up, and I'll put.
I have a plethora of books. If you've never read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, that book was written in 1925. It changed my life. Big ups to Lloyd Irvin for introducing me to that, introducing me to marketing, and really introducing me to this lifestyle I just talked to you about. I own Gladiators Academy of Lafayette, the Gladiators Academy affiliate program. I own 2 I Love Kickboxings. We own a dancing school. I own a CrossFit gym. I have a fight promotion. I do jiu-jitsu tournaments. My life is crazy. But all that has really, what's given me the ability to do all that started with Lloyd Irvin giving me a copy of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill about 8 years ago. And that book changed my life. And since then, I read the book once a year. I probably read it 20 times already, but I do read it once a year. And I recommend it to any just business owner, or also for business owners. If you're a martial arts school owner or business owner and you're doing your best as an entrepreneur or whatever, you have to read Michael Gerber's The E-Myth. That book is just will change the way you view business and will change the way you run your business. Profit First by Michael Makovsky as well. You see, I'll just keep going, dude. I read too many books. We'll be here until next Thursday. Discipline Equals Freedom is really good by Jocko Willink. Unbelievable book, Discipline Equals Freedom. It's kind of an easy book, just real quick excerpts in it. But Jocko has a bunch of great books out there.
Yeah, that guy's brilliant, man.
Yeah, brilliant guy.
Hey, anybody you want to give a shout out to real quick, Tim? Any of your fighters or any coaches or...
Yeah, my fighters are cool. Everybody's cool. I just want to give a shout out to my wife, Mamie. She's been with me 20 years. We met and we were dating about 15 minutes after we met because I'm a nutcase, and that's how I roll. When I met her, I knew she was the greatest thing I'd ever met, and we've been together ever since. She's given me 3 beautiful children, and you know, it's not easy being married to a guy like me. I'm a nutcase, and I'm all over the place, and she's amazing. She's the greatest mother, and just, she's the driving force behind my life. And we've been together 20 years. I'm so blessed. And she's the reason that I'm able to do what I do with my life. So props to my wife, OG, triple OG.
Nice. Tim, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking time to be on the show.
Always and forever, my friend. Call me. Let's do it again.
All right. I'd like to thank Tim for being on the show. I had a good time talking with him, and look forward to maybe having him back on the show again someday.
Yep, great job, Joe and Tim. Man, that's cool. I love these BJJBrick extra episodes.
Yeah, more is always better.
Except when you're eating. Guys, we got a question from one of our guests or one of our listeners. What do you guys eat before you roll?
Wow, Gary, that was a A+ transition there. I didn't see that coming at all.
Well, my transitions are on point, because I do spend an extra 5 minutes, and try to get an extra class in per month just by that. And I work on my transitions. And
you eat a clean, healthy diet before we podcast, and you have a clear mind.
I don't know. I eat a clean, healthy diet before I podcast, but not all the time before I roll.
There you go.
Which is a mistake.
So what do you eat, Gary, before you roll? What's your routine?
I really don't have a routine. And my thing is my life is so busy. Like half the time I come home, I have 2 minutes, and then I'm out the door again. So, I can tell you last week I ate Chipotle probably 30 minutes before I rolled. Some days I eat nothing, and I actually roll better if I eat nothing. I try to, hydrate a little bit better on days I roll, but my problem is I don't, whenever I'm training, I'm really just going straight from work or whatever, so I don't really have, I got some crazy scheduling problems going on.
Yeah, well, you say you roll better if you don't eat first. I think a key to remember here is that everybody's going to be different. You can't take and look at maybe your favorite athlete or your teammates and say, well, these 3 guys all do this, so I'm going to do this religiously. That might not be the best plan for you. For me, I like to eat an hour and a half to 2 hours before class, and it's not always the same thing, but I just like to get a little protein and a little bit of carbs, and it's the timing that's important for me. I can't eat 30 minutes. I could not do Chipotle 30 minutes before class. And I also don't like to have 4 or 5 hours with no food before class either. So that's my thing. It's a little protein, a little carbs, and about 2 hours before class is perfect.
What about you, Byron?
Yeah, I think the thing that we're discovering here is everybody does something a little bit differently. But So it's okay to experiment with what you're doing before you hit the mats and see if anything, if you go in and you roll today and you roll terrible, we all have those days. You get in the car and you're like, man, that sucked. Like, what was that? I don't know what happened to me. Think back. What did you eat? Did you get much sleep the night before? Did you eat a big old cheeseburger before you showed up? Is any of that stuff in play? And kind of evaluate it. You have a night where you roll great. What happened? Maybe it was the food kind of helped you perform better and give you, maybe you show up and you have a ton of energy. What happened on that? So all of our bodies are different, and the same with all three of us. If I train at 11 o'clock in the morning, I don't eat anything that entire. I'll skip breakfast on purpose, and I'll go till 11 and train on an empty stomach, kind of in a fasting state. I won't have eaten probably till it was 7 o'clock that night before. So I kind of like that, and I'm definitely not hungry when I'm rolling on the mats. I don't feel any different, and I just kind of like that. I think I burn a lot more calories when I'm training on empty like that, and I always feel good when I roll like that. But some people may not. And in the evening, if I'm training at 6:30, I'll typically have eaten something around 4, a little snack or something, a normal lunch. I don't skip lunch typically, so that's kind of what I do. But the important thing is you experiment with it. And another kind of a cheat to dieting, because dieting kind of sucks. It's not that fun. But if the days you're training, you could tell yourself, I'm training today, I want to eat healthy, or, you're at the restaurant, you're looking at what's on the menu, you know what, I got to train tonight. I better eat this instead of that, and I'll do better. I'll have more fun. I'll get better results on the mat. And if you could just trick yourself to maybe selecting a few meals a week differently, it's going to help out in the long run.
Byron, I took your advice here not too long ago. I know you're always bringing up
Gary.
that you're. Oh no, it actually worked for me. But you're a big fan of experimenting. It went back to your college days. But you talked about how you don't eat sometimes before you train, like you just said. You may have eaten dinner 7 o'clock the night before, and you're training at 11 o'clock, and you're not eating until afterwards. And I always had to conclude, I always felt that I needed to eat before I trained, no matter what. And that's what leads me to make some bad choices sometimes. And, I'll get on the mat and I'll feel full instead of, energized. And you said one day, not too long ago on this podcast, you were talking about training hungry, and you meant, you haven't eaten. And I actually tried that one time, and I thought it'd be a big disaster. And it really worked great. I trained really well. So now I have had some days where I haven't eaten. I've been, like you said, in a fasting state and trained and did well. And so, that was just one thing of experimenting, and it worked to my advantage. And it's something that I don't do all the time, but I have started doing it, and it's something I never would have done before. I thought I always needed some food in my body to give me that energy when I was rolling.
I've really discovered that, for me anyway, and I've heard it from other people as well, that being hungry is more of a indication of a habit with time. Like, you get hungry at this time. When that time passes, you're not hungry anymore until the next time that you're used to eating. And so a lot of times I'll get up, and a lot of times I eat breakfast. Sometimes I'll skip breakfast.
Yeah,
I'll be hungry. If I can distract myself for that hour, I'm not hungry anymore. And so when I hop into my car at 10:30 to drive the 30 minutes to go to class, sometimes I'm kind of hungry. When I get there, I'm distracted. The second I walk in the door, I'm distracted. I'm not thinking about food. I'm not hungry till I get home. And I don't even think about it.
But Byron, don't you, because I know you have a real affliction for nuts. I know you really like to eat nuts. And don't you have some nuts every morning?
I used to, I know Gary's trying to give me a hard time, but that's I have two kinds of breakfast. I have a protein bar breakfast, or I have a handful of mixed nuts, which is what Gary's referring to as he's trying to give me a hard time.
I thought you just ate nuts every day.
Yeah, well, I used to, and like anything, I change things and I see how it affects me. And several times a week, I'll eat a handful of mixed nuts, and I think it's a good breakfast if I have one. And it's good energy, it's good protein, good fat, and nothing wrong some nuts, Gary.
I had pistachios before the podcast. That was my pre-podcast snack.
I had some green tea. So there.
Man, you guys are eating good today.
Well, that's why our hindquarters are so tight.
That kind of brings us to a segment we skipped last time on the podcast, or kind of a audiobook that is maybe in the works. Joe and Gary have been, considering making this audiobook, BJJ Buns. And man, there's not two better people to make a book like this and help you out with the buns, looking good. Gary and Joe are always talking about looking good in tight pants, and that's an important thing. And so they actually have developed their jiu-jitsu to where when they're out there doing their techniques, they're out there training, all of the moves they do are getting their buns a great workout. And guys, I'm impressed. It has really paid off for you.
Well, I train no-gi most of the time, and I mean, who doesn't want to look good in spats? They're hard to look good in those things. And, one day Joe and we just sat around talking, and we happened to be watching a movie. We're watching something about Mary, and we got to the point where, they were talking about, the serial killer was saying instead of 7-minute abs, he, was going to have 6-minute abs. And yeah. So Joe and I were thinking the same thing. We both, were admiring each other's hindquarters, and we said, "Boy, with the with the experience we have, we should put together a book or maybe even an audio book about how to build your hindquarters up."
It's all about the squeeze. I mean, you just got to keep tight all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, the proof is in the pudding. No pun intended. But I mean, I've seen Joe actually put triangles on people and their head comes off. I mean, it's basically a guillotine. Their head falls off. Joe's squeeze is so tight.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, that'll be one that we'll all look forward to working on, and that's just one more benefit of jiu-jitsu is, being in great shape and looking good in some tight pants or skinny jeans if that's your thing.
Well, yeah, skinny jeans. I mean, you can roll in those. They do well. So they're just like spats except made out of jeans.
Hey guys, I want to give a quick mention of our Patreon support team. If you enjoy the podcast, want to help make it grow bigger and better and more sustainable, consider joining the team there, and we'd love to have you. There's a link in the show notes. Go to the website and find the link there. Either way is pretty easy. What Patreon is, it's a website for content producers to get support. So you might pledge $1 per episode, and every episode that comes out at the end of the month, your charge is at $4 or $5, depending on how many episodes come out. And you can put a cap on that, so that we crank out 30 episodes a month, which we've never done. We wouldn't do that. That's too much work anyway. But you could say, hey, I want to do 4 episodes. With the extra episode, I can't afford that. Or if there's 5 months or 5 weeks in this month plus the extra episode, might be looking at 6. You put a cap on it, say 4. We still love to have you on the team. That's awesome that you're willing to donate some funds to us. End of the month, your card will be charged the amount you've pledged, and when you sign up for this, I will gather up some things and put them in an envelope. These things will include a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch and a BjjBrick sticker. Just tokens of appreciation I'd like you to have for supporting the podcast. You're also invited to join the private Facebook group, so send me a message on Facebook or send me an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com. Let me know, hey, I'd like to join the private Facebook group, where sometimes we'll chat about the podcast or what's coming up and that sort of thing, get some questions on the show from you. We always have a good time on the private Facebook group, but it's private. So we do have a Facebook page. This is different than that. Anyway, I'd like to give a quick shout out to some of our continued supporters. We have Ramus, Keith, and Tim. Thank you guys for your continued support of the podcast. It means a ton to us. And not only do you sign up for it, but you keep on supporting us. Man, you guys are awesome.
And hey, Byron mentioned the private Facebook page. We also have a Facebook page that is not private. And we'd encourage you guys to go there and check us out. Check out all our social media. We've got an app. You can download that to your phone and get each episode as it comes out. And we have a YouTube channel, and Byron's got some product reviews and some other interesting things on there. So check that out as well, guys.
And if you're ever in Wichita, Kansas, send us an email. Byron and I would love to train with you. And if you're going to be south of Houston or in the New Orleans area, Joe would love to train with you. So send us an email, bjjbrick@gmail.com, or hit us up on our Facebook page with a message. We'd love to train with you.
Guys, had a great extra episode. Next week, bring back one of my somebody who I really enjoyed interviewing. It's been a little while, Neil Melanson, and he produced some great videos. He did a great interview with us, I don't know, about a year or so ago. I don't remember how long ago it was, but got a hold of him and got him for another interview. I was super happy to get him. And he just moved to Las Vegas. He's going to be making more videos, more DVDs coming out. And really happy to bring in Neil Melanson next week on our regularly scheduled episode. Till then, stay sweaty, my friends.
And eat a handful of nuts for breakfast.
In the shower. Train hard, train smart, get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.